It's just after midnight. The streets of uptown Chicago are quiet. Jack Hanley's cruising again. Jack Hanley cruises every single night. He's a homicide detective, a good cop. He's saved lives, and tonight, he hopes to do it again. Uptown's filled with prostitutes and transients. Lowlifes looking for a quick buck, looking to survive. The car lurks through the streets, seeking its prey, trying to stop the next one from making a mistake he'll regret.
Here he is.
A delicious snack, eyes filled with a perfect mix of fear and desperation. A boy in need of guidance.
Hey, mister, you need...
Hey, what are you doing out here?
I'm just waiting for my bus.
Oh, are you alone?
Yeah, I kinda ran away from home.
Alright, here's the thing. Here's the deal. You get in my car, we'll go back to the house, I'll make you some supper, I'll give you a bed to sleep in, we can watch a couple porno movies or something. In the morning we can come down, we get you a little ticket back home.
Really, officer? You do that?
Yeah, get on in.
Little does the kid know, the trap had already been set, and he fell right in. Nobody would know his name. Nobody would see him again. And that tickets? He wouldn't be getting a ticket back home to a family that misses him so dearly. He'd be getting a one-way ticket to the grave.
Good boy.
The car crunches into the driveway of 8213 Summerdale Avenue. The kid gets out of the car, completely unaware of the corpse encased in a cement tomb beneath his feet. Jack leads the kid to the couch, offers the kid a drink before disappearing into the kitchen. The kid looks around. The clowns hung on the walls all smiling down at him, laughing at a joke he's yet to know the punchline to. Like they know his fate. Like they've seen the same situation dozens of times before.
You like the clowns, kid? You know, I'm something of a clown myself. I've been known from time to time to maybe put on a little bit of makeup, put on a big puffy nose. Really, it's just to help the kids out. I love kids. Do you want to see a trick?
By morning, the kid would be dead, underwear shoved deep down his throat to prevent bodily fluids from seeping onto the carpet. Jack would drag the kid's cold, rigor mortis body and drop him into the crawlspace, a tomb of death and despair. Good boy.
Alright, we all know what clowns are. We've all been afraid of clowns. I remember a couple years ago, there was a rash of clown sightings that people were just fucking with other people, and then it turned into this media hysteria where people were assaulting people that were dressed as clowns, but they were also being idiots, so it was kind of okay. Clowns have had this way of leeching on to the fears of people. People are just so afraid of these goofy motherfucking dunces, even though that's all that they are. Ever since their first iterations way back in the land of ancient Egypt, they were just morons, basically jesters, to provide entertainment for assholes. Oh man, this guy is so funny for putting pies in his face. But it doesn't change that the Joker and Pennywise have all kind of reached this legendary claim. Like, they stand on the Mount Rushmore of clown history. These figures that have really captivated the minds and hearts of everybody everywhere all the time. And I think a lot of this, I'm not going to say a lot of it, that's the baseless claim that we're going to make for this episode. I think a lot of this is because of one man, one single individual, and it's not Bill Finger, it's John Wayne Gacy. John Gacy, he was a public figure. Everybody kind of knew who Gacy was. They didn't necessarily like him, but he had a way of telling everybody exactly what they wanted to hear so that they at least liked him being around. You know, if you had a friend who was constantly like, damn dog, you got one thick penis, all the time, every time that he saw you, he was telling you this, you'd like him. You'd want to keep him around because he'd inflate your ego. And that's all that Gacy was. He wanted to inflate everybody's ego so that they liked him. That was his secret. That was his manipulation. He might hate all of these fucking people, but it didn't matter because he wanted them to like him. That's all it came down to. He owned his own business. He ran a contracting business and he did a bunch of remodel work for dumb people. He hired all those strapping young teenage boys who didn't have a place to stay. He was really helping out the community. He was the host of some of the most rootinest, tootinest, damn gun shootinest parties known to the Midwest. Almost a Great Gatsby, but way greasier. You know, parties like dress up as your favorite cultural appropriation, or dress up as your favorite slave master, or dress up as your favorite murderer. And these parties were fucking great, as long as you didn't mind that sickly sweet smell that everybody happened to know about that was just wafting through the vents in his house. Thank God for the days where he would have parties outside because we wouldn't have to smell that fucking smell. He was also very involved in politics. I'm sure he just lobbied for Democrats. Oh, but don't forget that he was best fucking friends with Rosalind Carter. And if he ever got a chance, he'd show you that picture so fucking hard just to prove that he was at least in the same room as the First Lady of the United States, Rosalind Carter. Jimmy Carter, a peanut farmer. What a wonderful president. There's some people who he is their favorite president. And I don't understand why. In his community service work, he would also dress as Pogo the Clown. See, now we're coming full circle. We're coming all the way back to the beginning. He even designed that shit himself, even though it's deeply, deeply terrifying. But he would use it basically to go to hospitals, and he'd have his trusty little sidekick, Patches the Clown, and they'd go around making all the sick little children forget that they were dying. I don't know. They would do little magic tricks for them, do little magic shows. Oh, he's got a little invisible dog that he's walking around, and there's a little bottle that's attached to the leash, so when he squeezes it, oh man, the dog had a little accident because he's shy. And we also, during these big, public events, while handing out candy to children and all this bullshit, if you ever felt a little we'll say superior to these fucking ingrates, he would crush their little hands into fucking dust because they're ungrateful little rats. Gacy was a character. Everybody loves Gacy. But we must not forget that he was arrested and charged with the murder of 33 teenage boys, all of which were buried beneath his house at 8213 Summerdale Avenue in the suburbs of Chicago, Illinois. Ladies and gentlemen, I welcome you, the killer clown of Chi-Town.
Don't we make you laugh? Aren't we fucking funny?
John Wayne Gacy was born March 17th, 1942 in some fucking place in Illinois. I'm assuming it's close to Chicago. March 17th marks St. Patrick's Day, a day where a holy man banished a bunch of snakes out of potato land, and also where Americans decide to get plastered and ruin families forever. But he was born to John Stanley Gacy and Marion Robinson, the former of which will be known from this point forward as the Old Man, just to make my job easier. But John Stanley Gacy, already having a daughter at this point, was desperate. He was desperate for a manly man. He wanted the star quarterback. Instead, the Old Man gets a greasy Twinkie who gets caught wearing his mother's underwear, a son in need of lessons, a son who must be obedient and must learn. And yet, when he was caught wearing his mother's underwear and got beaten within an inch of his life, you know what he did? He didn't stop wearing the underwear. Instead, he got better at hiding the act in a hole underneath the porch, which sounds very familiar to hiding things inside of a crawl space. But the Old Man was a World War I veteran and a machinist, whatever the fuck that is. And Marion had these excuses. The reason that he was an old, grumpy fuck was because he had a little tumor that was just pressed right up against his amygdala, and every now and then it would swell with blood, which would boil him over into this uncontrollable rage. Oh, it's fine, sweetie. Don't mind that he threw a temper tantrum and threw his plate across the wall and we haven't seen him for 2 or 3 days. It's just the tumor. He'll come back, and I'll make him his favorite meal of boiled meat and potatoes. But the Old Man would lurk in the basement. It was like his little den for non-stop jerking off and chugging down, drowning in alcoholic drinks. And when he came shuffling up those stairs, food better be done. And little John Gacy also had this tendency of stroking out into seizures and blacking out and, I don't know, coughing up foam, whatever you do in these situations. And it might be because of these repeated whacks across the skull that he would receive from the old man from a broom handle. Or it might be this desperate plea for attention. The only thing that matters was it was something that would cause him to not graduate from school and instead join the working force at around 16 or 17. John Gacy did date. Even though he was a greasy little Twinkie, he did have girlfriends. And the first time that he got the opportunity to lose his virginity, him and his date, they went up to Old Makeout Point, where everybody goes to have sex in a car in the middle of the woods. And they're making out. He's getting a little gropey with his little sausage fingers. But as soon as she starts undressing, and the second those nipples pop out from beneath the shirt, the man goes out cold. And he would stay as such until she put her clothes back on. And he would miraculously, at that moment, come back too, as if it were planned, as if he wasn't really interested in going all the way with girls, as if he was only doing it out of the expectations of his father. A father that was so deeply terrified that his son would end up a homosexual. Gacy wouldn't graduate from school, and instead he would join the working force. And in this, being a 16-year-old, as most 16-year-olds are, he wanted a car. He wanted a car for himself so he could get where he wanted to go. He could do the things that he wanted to do. But here's the problem. The old man is a control freak, a megalomaniac. So when Gacy had the idea to basically save up to put a down payment on a car, and the old man gets wind of this, he goes out and he buys that car outright and says, no, you're not going to join the world and get your own credit score. You're going to pay me back. And until that happens, and until you pay it off, it is mine to tell you when you can go out to the arcade, when you can go to the movies, when you can do whatever these teenagers did. John didn't really like this. So he tried to combat it by making his own pair of keys for the car. But when that happened, the old man would take off the distributor cap of his car. And I don't know what the fuck that means because I'm not a mechanic. I'm not here to give you mechanical knowledge. He saw it as he lost the battle, and it kind of infuriated him. So in the dead of the night, Gacy would pack up his car and drive off into the moonlight, all the way west to Las Vegas, Nevada, the city of sin. And here he would get a job as an ambulance man. And here he would get his first interaction with death. And he'd see all the weird things that people did when they were on the brink of death. Whether they shat their pants, the things that they would say to their God. It was basically a sexual awakening. We're going to call it a sexual awakening. It's not really a sexual awakening, but it's an awakening to something that he hadn't quite seen before. But the problem is that he wasn't quite 21 yet, and this was a job, for whatever reason, that needed to be held by 21-year-olds. So he was basically demoted to a mortuary assistant, which was miserable for him. And a mortuary assistant was a job for transients, basically. People that were, traveling across the country looking for a little bit of spare cash. And I mean, this is exactly what John was. So there was a little cot that he could sleep on that was behind the embalming office. But otherwise, he would basically help the mortician. He would set up the bodies. He would set up the tools, maybe take pictures. The mortician would even end up calling the police with suspicions that this guy that he had hired was fucking with bodies. And the police wouldn't do anything. But the mortician had the correct suspicions. Because one night specifically, Gacy did crawl into the coffin of a little boy, a little teenage boy. And he got an erection while he was snuggling up to this thing, but a deep fear kind of washed over him, this fear that he was going to get caught, that he was going to get in trouble. And it kind of spooked him so much that he had to call mom and say, please, is it okay if I come home? Marion would say, yes, please come back. We miss you very much. But I'd imagine that there had to be some sort of escalation. You don't just hop into a coffin with a corpse. That's not something that you just do. I'm sure one day he was preparing it and he saw the hand just kind of flop out and he was like, what if I held it? And then he's, putting the makeup on the body or whatever, getting ready for the funeral, and he's just like putting some lipstick across the lips, and he's like, what if I just gave you a little kiss? And he's powdering up the balls because they're a little sweaty, and he's just like, what if I just stick these balls in my mouth? So he'd go crying, wah, 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 all the way home.
Are you looking to refresh your home or business? Just call PDM Contractors and we'll fix you up. I'm not a freaking jack-off. PDM Contractors started from my garage, so we're always down to help local businesses because we know what it's like. We have an entire staff of strong, tall, slender, beautiful boys that are here to help. I'm not a freaking jack-off. I'll come down, check the place out, and tell you what you need to do. Simple as that. I'm not a jack-off. We've got hammers, nails, tires, wood boards, and a bunch of boys to come do it for you. I'm not a freaking jacker! So come on down, we got boys to contract.
John would eventually get a job at a shoe department store, and he would suck metaphorical balls to work his way all the way up to some sort of managerial position. And if there's anything that a childhood of abuse teaches you, it's that you will tell somebody anything to get those sweet little morsels of appreciation. Here he would also meet his first wife, Marilyn Myers, who would also become the mother of his 2 children. Now, Marilyn Myers was a rich white person, and her father would he would buy a couple chains of KFC out in Iowa. The Gacy family would pack up and move out to Iowa. Gacy would end up going to KFC College, or whatever the fuck it is, where he would, I don't know, get the title of the Colonel. When he was managing these KFC restaurants, he'd tell all of his teenage employees to just call him the Colonel. But John would also join his local JC's chapter, which, as far as I can find out, the JC's are just a bunch of weird dudes that learn about management and career positions, and it's all about God. It's for nerds. It's literally for nerds. Not even like nerds in the respect of guys who like comic books. Like, it's literal lowlifes, people who just don't fucking, like, sociopathic assholes do this kind of thing. I have no idea the point of joining the JC's. I have no idea. I don't even know if they're still an organization because I'm so bad at research. But the problem was that this local chapter of the JC's was having issues with their youth numbers. They wanted more younger people to join because they're afraid of dying out, basically. I'd imagine that this is a place that is not nearly around as much now. Gacy decided, hey, I'll bump up these youth numbers, and he'd start recruiting his teenage employees. And the way that he'd do it is he would throw these parties where he would he would play pool and, I don't know, show porno films, have a bunch of drugs and alcohol, just have basically these teen ragers with his employees and say, hey, why don't you just join my crew and you can do this all the time. But he would also bet against his employees at these pool games.
If you win this one, I'll suck your dick. No, I'm just playing.
Now, I probably should have mentioned this earlier, but it's got to get out of the way at some point. So Gacy's first homosexual experience, the first time that he laid down with a man, was a night that he went out with one of his friends. I don't know how he met this friend. Again, I'm bad at research. How many times do I have to tell this to you? But one of his friends or whatever, one of his coworkers or something, he had gone out and they were out, I don't know, fucking just probably hooking up with chicks or whatever. And the guy told them almost anecdotally, like as they're pre-gaming, they're sitting in the car waiting to go into the club, and he says, Gacy, I got something to tell you. You have a 50% chance of making it home with a respectable mate tonight, whereas I have a 100% chance. Gacy says, what do you mean about that? What are you talking about? You go out and you try and hit on all these girls, and they either go for the bait or they don't. And you're screwed if they don't. Whereas me, I go for the girls, they turn me down, it's whatever. I then turn to the guys, and I can almost guarantee that I will be taking a guy home. So Gacy laughs it off, and they prepare their big old night, having fun, drinking it up, hopping from club to club. They're doing the bar crawl, and eventually Gacy blacks out, only to wake up a few hours later with this dude sucking on his dick. And Gacy would like to say that he was horrified, that this is the worst experience that could have possibly happened to him, and yet the homosexual sex continues, and this is something that would continue from this point forward. Now, Don Voorhees was the son of a fellow JC member. So many teenagers experience a rift with their father. It's almost expected. And Gacy, seeing this relationship, would see it as an opportunity. So he would come in as the father figure that little Donald never had. He'd be like, oh man, your dad's such a dick. Well, you could totally talk to me about these kind of things. And he was basically opening that door. And he'd say, hey, Don, you want to come over and we could talk about this more? Like, I could get you a drink. I'll make you some pasta. And when they get back to his house, Gacy then procures a porno film. He says, you like watching porn, kid? And the kid's like, yeah, sure, whatever. I have no idea. I feel like if an adult man were to come to me with a porno film, I'd just be like, yo, dude, get the fuck away from me. I don't know what it is with people who decide that it's okay to jerk off in the same room together. It's just weird. So Gacy would kind of allude to this sex, you know, and they're watching this porno film, and, you know, he'd kind of nudge him. He's like, you hard right now? And the kid, like, nervously is just like, dude, leave me the fuck alone. He's like, because I'm hard right now. And I was like, dude, seriously, shut up. I don't want to fucking talk to you. You're ruining my mojo. And Gacy's like, it's okay if you're hard. It's not gay. I mean, we're just two dudes, right? We're just hanging out. You don't got to worry about it. And I mean, if I just happen to fall and your penis lands in my mouth, it's fine. We're just two guys. Like, it's not gay. We're basically just masturbating with each other's mouths. And this is a situation that would go on for way longer than it should. But eventually, with little Donald being uncomfortable with the situation, he would start extorting money out of Gacy. And he'd say, hey, give me like $50 so I can go to the arcade with my friends. Give me like $100 so I can, buy this camera. Give me $300 so I can buy a car, you fat fuck. And Gacy was kind of getting sick of it. So it just got to a point where he's like, man, this guy's just stripping me of cash. And eventually Carol's going to come knocking. Is her name? No, it's Marilyn. Fuck. Eventually Marilyn's going to come knocking. Hey, Gacy, why are you spending like $700 a month? Where is this money going, Gacy? Gacyth? So eventually Gacy just says, you know what? Fuck you. Enough is enough. And immediately Don goes and tells his father, hey, this dude's been sucking me off on a regular basis. Being a good father, he immediately goes to the authorities. And John Gacy gets arrested and he gets charged and he fails a lie detector test. And everything goes horribly wrong. So what does Gacy do in this situation? He makes it worse. He hires this other high school kid. His name was Russell Schroeder, who goes to the same school as Don. Russell Schroeder was also a kid that Gacy would take out. Gacy would teach him the ways of breaking into houses, basically to kind of give him some ammo. Oh, you're going to talk shit about me? Well, I'm going to go tell the police that you have been breaking into houses. How does that fucking sound, you goddamn idiot? So he'd hire this guy, beat this twerp within an inch of his life, stop him from testifying, and I'll suck your dick. No, I'll pay off your car or whatever. But it turns out that little Don Voorhees is a scrappy motherfucker, and he gets away. So what he does is he goes to the authorities and he says, yo, this fucking guy, he fucking beat the shit out of me. So then they arrest Russell, and Russell immediately spills the beans. Yeah, this dude Gacy, yeah, he said he'd pay off my car. He said he'd pay me like $1,500 if I beat the shit out of this kid. But even without that situation happening, like, there is a handful of situations where Gacy was coercing sex out of all of these kids. I mean, it's Don Voorhees wasn't the first, and sadly, Don Voorhees wouldn't be the fucking last. But I believe there was even instances of him whacking dudes with a fucking crowbar without, like, really understanding what he's doing. And when the guy's like, yo, what the fuck? Why'd you hit me with a crowbar? And he's just like, oh man, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean it. Something just came over me. I just don't understand. I didn't mean it. I'm sorry. Please don't fucking get me in trouble. But he just had this long list of witnesses of all of these kids that he was just fucking sucking off and doing all this dirty shit. So no matter what, this dude was getting locked away. And all of these doctors that had kind of analyzed him before the trial, they were all telling the judge, you have to lock this guy up. Like, it is guaranteed that this man is going to do something like this again. You have to give him the maximum sentence. You have to lock him up for as long as you possibly can. Please. And they'd lock him up for 10 years. Gacy would go to jail. His wife, the day that he gets charged, would file for divorce, and he would take the kids, and he would never see them again. The day that Gacy gets charged with sodomy is all of the nightmares confirmed for good old Daddy Gacy. And on the Christmas day of that year, Gacy's father would pass away. And I don't know if I can't remember if it was like from cancer or some dumb bullshit, or it was a heart attack, something like that. It doesn't matter. The dude dies. But Gacy swears that the old man died. He died from disappointment. And wouldn't you know it that the prison system wouldn't let an inmate out to see his father's funeral. I mean, that's crazy that if you break the law, they don't just let you live your life as normal. But this really kind of acts like as the linchpin of John Wayne Gacy's psyche. You know, he loved his father deeply. Through all of the abuse and everything, I mean, it's almost this realm of Stockholm Syndrome. Now, in 1973, what starts off as a heavily intricate plan to rob a bank really boiled down into a good old-fashioned orgy because of the police complete disregard for the lives of the 4 hostages. The police being bad at their job? Did this ever happen today, of all days? It's not like the system is being managed by a bunch of closeted homosexuals that always fantasized about getting bukkakeed in the high school classrooms, and after years of repression has manifested in a bunch of passive-aggressive megalomania. That sounds familiar. Oh, fuck. Basically, Stockholm Syndrome, where either through manipulation or just plain old perspective, you want to take your captors home to meet mama and have some of a good old Christmas lasagna because it's good. He loved him dearly and he wanted his respect and admiration, and for a time he got it. But there underneath the surface, Gacy was kind of living the life that he wanted to live, which was the life of a gay man for the most part. He was just doing it with the wrong people. He's battling this need to have penises in his mouth. John's wants are defined by what people want from him, which leaves him a massive lack of identity and leaves this giant gaping hole deep inside of his soul. Everybody's got their different way of coping. Some people fill it with sugar, I fill it with dumb physical media, and some fill it with murder.
Do I stutter, bitch?
Now, Gacy would rise the ranks inside the prison. He would get a job inside of the kitchen, which I guess it's a job that everybody wants. It's the most wanted because I'm sure it's the easiest thing to do. And he'd make his way up there fairly quickly by being a model inmate because he's very good at doing what people want him to do. I think he does well kind of fitting himself into this infrastructure where all he has to do is follow directions. He's a little worker bee and he will work and work and work to make you happy. But since Gacy's father passed away, Marion would call the jail and they said, please let my son out. I can't cope on my own. I need somebody at the house to take care of me. Please just let him out early. And either because of him being a model inmate, which I'm sure that's how Gacy's going to take it, or because of his mother's intervention, within 2 years of his 10 years served, Gacy gets let free. But he gets to go back to Chicago and he moves in with his mother and everything is seemingly back to normal. So Gacy is released from jail with a 12-month probation period hanging over his head, so he moves back in with Mama. And while he's there, he does also, in fact, get a job as a short-order cook. But Gacy's good streak wouldn't last for long because 8 months into his 12 months probation, he'd be picked up by the police for sexually assaulting a teenage boy that he picked up at a Greyhound bus station. Man, this all sounds quite familiar. See, the problem here is there's a question that's brewing in your head. Man, if he got caught, why didn't he immediately get put on jail? He broke his probation. Like, this is exactly what this system is in place for. So these violent offenders, if they decide to fuck up again way too soon because they can't control their tendencies, then they get sent back to jail. That's what this is supposed to be for, right? No. The problem is that for the longest time, back in the way back days, not now, don't try this now. Way back in the back days, it was hard for precincts to kind of communicate from one to the other. And this is really kind of the reason why a lot of serial killers are able to go on for so long. You can fuck up in one state, cross state lines and fuck up there, and since there's no communication between these precincts, it's basically like you have a clean record. When this little sexual assault charge pings onto his record, it doesn't get notified to the Iowa Parole Board. Instead of being locked up indefinitely because he's a violent criminal who needs to be put away, he gets off scot-free. And to double down on that, the kid just mysteriously doesn't show up to patrol, so they drop the case, so he doesn't even actually get charged with it. Being that he was completely miserable, as most people are in your daily 9 to 5, where you're working for some asshole who literally doesn't care about you, that you're just there to service everybody else's needs, Gacy decides that he wants a change. He wants something new. He wants something for himself. So he starts his business of PDM contractors, also known as painting, decorating, and maintenance contractors. If you want to remodel your house, if you want to fix up your house and you want it to look good and nice and spick and span, that's what he's there for. That's what he's going to do for you. He starts taking on jobs at night so that he can build his business while still working as a short order cook. If Gacy, a fucking renowned serial killer, can understand that you have to work your ass off in order to get the things that you want in life, you have to put in the work and you have to be miserable while doing it. If this fucking guy can understand that, why can't you? Get off your fucking ass and go write a goddamn book. But it turns out that it was very difficult to run a business out of a condo. Chicago. They would eventually end up selling it and move into 8213 Summerdale Avenue. A nice little ranch-style home. A good home to raise your kids in. Too bad Gacy has never heard from his kids again, and he never will. All the while, Gacy was having sexual relationships with men. He's going out, he's cruising, he's picking up drifters, he's offering a job. Gacy would eventually reignite a relationship with an ex-girlfriend from high school, Carol Hoff, who is recently divorced with 2 children, so desperate for any amount of attention or love that she could possibly get. And Mr. Nice Guy Gacy is here to give her a nice little back rub. Gacy's trying to fill the mold that his father had left behind. He's trying to be that nice guy. They would quickly be engaged, and Marion would promptly move out. I know this is the moment that you've all been waiting for. It's time to talk about the first murder. According to the Wikipedia page, the man's name was Timothy McCoy. Ever since the old man passed away, the holidays have been very difficult for Gacy. It always brings about this depression and this rage that he just can't seem to get over. And not to mention that also on New Year's Day, his aunt would pass away. Oh, there's so much going on. There's so much chaos in the world. How can one man possibly cope? Well, they're having a little get-together on New Year's Day. They're all drinking. They're having a good time. They're trying to relish in the land of the living and kind of just have an appreciation for one another. So Gacy and his mom are there hanging out. Gets a little drunk, and he says, "Mom, let's go home." And the mom says, "No, fuck you. You're drunk. I'm staying here. I'm not going home with you when you're drinking like that." Which is the right thing to do. Ladies and gentlemen, don't drink and drive. So what does Gacy do? Well, he does what he always does. He goes on nightly cruise. He picks up a boy. According to him, he decided to stop downtown and look at the ice sculptures because he loves doing that every single year. I think that's a fucking vagrant excuse. So he goes down to the bus station, as he always does, and here he finds sweet little Timothy McCoy. Kid says he's got 12 hours to kill before his bus comes to pick him up for West Virginia, and boy is he mighty hungry. So Gacy, being the nice guy that he is, he decides to take this kid up. He said, "Hey, I can take you home, have a couple drinks, I get you some food, I'll cook you up some sopapillas or something." And the kid's like, "Oh shit, fuck yeah, thanks." And he hops in his car. You're not gonna get picked up by this dude unless he's attracted to you. So don't be afraid. Don't be afraid of being picked up by a serial killer. He just has to like you first. So don't be nice to anybody and you'll be fine. But Gacy establishes his boundaries. He's trying to figure out where this guy is. Finds out that maybe he's a little bit on the bisexual edge. So they get back home, they have a couple drinks, and then it boils down into good old-fashioned suckfest. The next morning, Gacy would be asleep in his bed and he'd open his eyes all bleary-like. You know, when you get all those little eye boogers all crusting your eyes closed. But when he does, he sees this figure coming at him. And he looks again and he sees the glint off the knife. And his eyes shoot open because he realizes that this kid's coming to fucking kill him. So he immediately pounces out of bed and tackles the kid. Gets a gash on his arm in the process. And he's fighting for that knife. He's trying to get control. And eventually he plunges that knife deep into the kid's chest. And as soon as that blood comes rushing out, he orgasms. Gacy gets up, walks to the kitchen and cleans off his cut. And he notices what's there sitting on the counter. The kid had made breakfast for him. And he was coming to wake him up. A sweet gesture turned into manic delirium. In a panic, he would drag that kid into the crawl space and drop him down, knowing that he didn't have much time before his mom would show up. And later, he would eventually bury him in that crawl space. Now, here's the problem. Here's the issue that I have. When it comes to murder, you only ever get one side of the story. And obviously, the survivor is going to make it sound way fucking better for himself. But this would be the one and only victim, according to Gacy, that would be killed via knife. Timothy McCoy is the first person to enter the crawl space. 7 months later, Carol and John would be married. 1972 to 1975 is really the establishment of everything that he would become in the public pariah. This is where the business becomes wildly successful. This is where the clown comes into play. This is where he starts getting heavily involved in politics. This is where he eventually meets Rosalind Carter. Everything happens in this moment. This is like the Batman Begins of John Wayne Gacy. He wants to gain his father's approval, even from the grave, but Gacy also wants to suck a dick. If 1972 to 1975 is the rising of John Wayne Gacy, then the few years after is the moment where he takes everything that he's gained and he throws it directly in the toilet. Everything is building up to a point. We're watching the cycle happen in real time, and it all kind of starts with little John Butkovich. And John Butkovich is your friendly neighborhood teenager, and Gacy, he sees something in him. He looks him in the eyes and he says, I want to know what his penis tastes like. So he hires him on. We see the exact same things happening over and over again. He's gonna get in. He's gonna test his bounds. He's gonna see just how far he can go. John and John, Big John, Little John, according to Carol, they start having sex secretly in the garage. Don't tell anybody about it. And all while still being married with Carol. So they're going out. They're doing projects. He's paying them money. They're having casual sex inside of this weird sex den of a garage that he had. A garage that Carol was not allowed to go inside. You best believe that if you ever go inside that man's garage, you're gonna get in trouble. And one night when Gacy decided to go off with some attractive young blonde boy, Carol decides to put on the big boy pants and go out and see what the fuck is going on there. Now this is an era where the garages are not attached to the house, and also I'm pretty sure it's not paved either. It just has a dirt floor. But inside of this garage, she would see mirrors strapped up to the ceiling, red light bulbs screwed into lamps, mattresses and pillows and blankets. I don't know how she reacted, but I'm sure it wasn't great. If you have a secret man who's having a secret relationship and he's going out and he's having sex with as many people as possible, I'm sure it's not great. And in terms of sex, Gacy had a very warped opinion. Having sex with guys, that's basically just masturbation. I'm purely just trying to nut. But sex with women, that's something different. When it comes to sex with women, all of your attention must be focused on this prized flower. If you aren't doing everything in your power to try and maintain erection, if you aren't doing everything in your power to get this woman to orgasm, then are you even actually having sex? It was all about the woman. It's paying attention to her, filling her needs, and all. She came first, and I'm sure it was desperately difficult to try and maintain an erection when there wasn't a penis inside of his mouth. Gacy decides to lay down the smooth one Mother's Day. He waits for Carol to come home. He's set up a trail of flowers leading to the bedroom. He lights some candles. He's got some Marvin Gaye or John Clancy Brown playing in the background. It's all smooth and sultry, and he proceeds to lay Carol down for the best walrus sex that she's ever experienced in her entire life. And as he's laying there smoking a cigarette, his sweaty gullet, the deed is done, and he turns to her and says, "We don't ever expect that ever again. That is the last time that we're having sex." What balls, what machismo on this man. And due to a lot of the constraints in the relationship, the way that he was starting to treat her and her children, this marriage would end very quickly after that. But she would still kind of go out on dates with him, even after they divorced, which is kind of weird, because I think for whatever reason, she saw something in Gacy that she just wanted it to work out. But thankfully, she finds somebody better and she gets married to somebody else. Thank God that she was able to escape this travesty of a marriage. But now with his house completely open and nobody there to fuck with him. Oh shit, we gotta go back to Butkovich. Sorry about that. As with every instance of the Gacy story, money becomes a problem. Money becomes an issue. There was some sort of situation going on where Butkovich believed that Gacy was garnishing his wages and it was pissing him off. Gacy believes, no, we put that carpet down. You're paying for that carpet that we put in your apartment or whatever, some bullshit. Basically, Butkovich felt that he was deserved money. I feel like this shit happens way too often. And it got to the point where Butkovich decided to show up with a bunch of his friends to muscle the money out of Gacy. A few words were thrown, a few fists were thrown, and Butkovich leaves. And he says, "Dude, if I ever fucking see you again, I'm gonna chop your dick off." So Gacy would boil over. He would start drinking. And according to him, he would black out.
Inside Gacy's mind, he'd love for you to believe that there is multiple personalities, that he has dissociative identity.
How you say that word?
Dissociative identity disorder.
You know, it's when you have multiple personalities that are kind of built inside of your head. It's the thing that MK Ultra is just looking for. They're looking for children that have been sexually abused so that they can implant their own personalities inside of these people.
But he would like you to believe that inside of Gacy, there is two of them. Good Gacy and the bad Gacy. Good Gacy.
He just wants to make his wife happy. He wants to bring the turkey home for all his little fucking fat children. He wants to bring home the bacon. He wants to eat blueberry pie.
Bad Gacy? Oh, everybody watch out for the bad Gacy, because he wants to have homosexual sex. And that homosexual sex leads to murder. Because inside of bad Gacy, there is what we like to call
call the other guy. Does this make sense that the good and the bad, they also have their own versions of the personalities? Well, how about, what if I lay this on you for a change? There's also Pogo the Clown, and inside Pogo the Clown, there's good Pogo who loves helping children. He'll do a little dog trick for you. He'll do a little pee trick for you or whatever. And then there's the bad Pogo who wants to break every little fucking bone in their stupid fucking head. And then there's Jack Hanley. There's the good Jack Hanley. Oh, he just wants to help people. This is the Gacy that wants to be the policeman. I don't know why anybody would want to play pretend being a cop. Inside of the bad Gacy, black out and go all fucking hypnotized, and then he'd wake up and be like, oh, the other guy, he killed somebody again. Well, looks like me, good John Gacy, instead of going to the police or anybody, guess I'll just get rid of this body. Here's the secret. John Gacy is full of shit. The guy is a grade A sociopath who doesn't care how he affects other people. And the big problem when it comes to insanity, if I've learned anything, I've read a few books on the case going after my master's degree. Nobody can really determine exactly what insanity is. Nobody knows what it means to be insane. So all of these scientists and all of these doctors are all disagreeing as to what actually is wrong with John Gacy, because there's no big golden book that defines A, B, and C. So when you're a prosecutor, you're gonna go find whatever doctor agrees with you, and if you're the defendant, you're gonna go find whatever doctor agrees with you, and allow the sciences to fight each other to try and prove to the fucking jurors who was right. Gacy didn't have multiple personalities. Gacy was a murderer through and through. He knew exactly what he's doing, and all of these excuses, all of this bullshit that he made after the fact, it was all purely to just get out of being in trouble because he didn't want to have to wipe his ass. Nobody wants to wipe their ass. We'd all love to live in the shit and scum of our world, but guess what? You don't want other people to smell your shit, so you just do it because you care about the people in the world. This analogy has gotten away from me. And he goes out, and he happens to stumble across an inebriated John Butkovich. And even more importantly, he stumbles across an alone Butkovich. So he coerces him into his car, but he gets him back to the garage, and he has his way with him. The murder isn't really what Gacy is kind of going after. When looking at Gacy and his profile, the man likes control. He likes beating and torturing his victims, raping them, doing as much as he possibly can to defile them and dehumanize them and break them down to the smallest portion. And we can imagine that this is exactly what is happening to Butkovich when Gacy takes him back to the house and parks inside of the garage. He has a night of fun until that boy is fucking dead, and he would bury him right where he laid, and he'd decide to pave the garage. And suddenly, Butkovich is forever encased in a tomb of cement. Well, not forever. He does eventually get out of this. He does get put to rest. Thank God. Rest in peace, John Butkovich. But this is the story that we see for Gacy's victim time and time and time again. Whether it's being picked up as a transient and you're dying that night, whether you're picked up and he kind of keeps you around as one of his coworkers for a month or two, suddenly all of these boys just kind of disappear. And on top of that, he's having his coworkers while he's going out and doing all these jobs, dig these little trenches down under the house so that he can dispose of these bodies. Because this has become a premeditated thing. This is something that he's starting to prepare for. He knows that at some point he's going to go out, he's going to pick a kid up, and he's going to bring him home. But if you ask Gacy, it's not him. He's not the one murdering these kids. Let's believe the crazy man. See, Gacy had two tricks that he used in his tortures and his killing, which is how he captured and how he killed his victims. The first trick was known as the handcuff trick, and being that Gacy was a clown, he'd kind of use that as the motivation. You know, he'd show him like a little card trick, like, oh, is this your card? And it'd really entice that excitement where it's, and you know, a lot of these kids that he's picking up after the whole Butkovich situation, all these kids that he's picking up, they're all very like curious. They're like, well, what's going on with this guy? He's a friendly neighborhood clown. He's got magic tricks to show me. And then he just kind of starts casually just dropping the line, oh yeah, the kids love the handcuff trick. And they're like, well,
what's the handcuff trick? And Gacy's like, oh no, you know, it's not that big a deal. You don't, you know, it's not that exciting. You don't get to look at it. And everybody's, their curiosity is super peaked. So they're like, well, but wait, hold on. What's the handcuff trick? And he says, I'm just able to get out of a pair of handcuffs very well. And they're like, well, please show us. I want to know. I want to see it. Like, show me. I'm very interested. So then Gacy takes the handcuffs and he's like, oh, look, it's hard. You know, these are not fake handcuffs. Puts them on behind his back. And within seconds, whew, he's free. And it's like, oh my God, how did you do that? Can you show me how to do that? And Gacy's like, of course I can show you how to do it. So then he puts the handcuffs behind the kids' backs and he, you know, locks them into place. And he watches the kids start to struggle around a bit. And they're like, hey, what the fuck's going on? And then he gets right up in their fucking ear and says,
the trick is you have to have the fucking keys, you retard.
And then as soon as he gets them in that position, as soon as he knows he's in control, that flip in his brain switches. He's throwing them around. There's a handful of occasions where he would do it to coworkers. He'd get them in the handcuffs. But the problem is that Gacy's a little tub of lard and can't really... The reason that he's putting these kids in the handcuffs is because he knows he can't fight back. He knows that he's weak. They fight back, and then he gets all apologetic. It's very similar to back when he was in Iowa, cracking on kids with his fucking hammer, and then immediately being like, oh, I'm so sorry, I didn't mean you want a Band-Aid. Here, have a beer, have a joint, have something. Just please don't tell on me. Please don't let anybody know that this is what I'm doing. And then there was a rope trick.
Shoelaces, huh? You're in trouble now. Yeah, right. Aren't you afraid sitting that close to me? What the hell? Oh, this is too long. You don't need it this long. What I told him, I said, here, all you do is you wrap it around, you put one knot in it. And I said, then you put a second knot in it. Okay? Mm-hmm. I said, then you take a stick and stick it in here, and you just turn this. And I said, it causes a tourniquet. I said, that's the only knot I ever learned.
Precisely the kind of knot found on the ropes wrapped around the necks of the victims found under the house on Summerdale.
But there was a survivor, somebody that was able to survive the full punishment of John Wayne Gacy, Jeffrey Rignall. He was out walking from somewhere, I don't know, he had left his girlfriend at home, and he gets picked up by John. And it doesn't even seem like this is a situation where John decides to, you know, test the waters, take him back home. I believe that Rignall at some point very early on is like, yo, dude, this is not going the way that I want it to. And Gacy immediately doses him with chloroform and continually keeps him under. Anytime that he gets a moment to stir, he brings him back down. So the whole night is this hazy blur of being, you know, driven to Gacy's house, getting strung up, being tortured, having different objects being inserted into his body, being burned, being waterboarded, being drowned, just absolutely torturing this kid. And one of these times in Jeffrey Rignall's testimony, which is this book that he wrote called 29 Below. It's out of print at this point, but it's like fucking $300. So I'm not getting it in my lifetime, but good God, would I love just a chance to just kind of, you know, just borrow a copy and just read it and see what's going on in there. He swears he sees somebody else there. He swears that it's not just him and Gacy in the room. He swears that there is a co-conspirator. And that's really the conspiracy that's on the backlog of this entire book, is that Gacy didn't work alone, that he had somebody working for him, finding people that knew that he was killing people and helping him dispose of the bodies. I don't necessarily think that it's true. Gacy is manipulative. We know this as a fact. We see it back when he hires another high school kid to go and beat the shit out of one of his accusers. We see it in him forcing his co-workers to dig trenches to help with the flooding in his crawl space, but we don't really see anybody actually being close to him. I feel like if he got caught, he would immediately call somebody else out, throw them under the bus, instead of saying, oh, I didn't kill them. It was the person in my brain. I guess he did have some other excuse that, oh, that's not, I don't know how those bodies got there. Just because there's bodies on my property means that I killed them? How could you possibly say that? How could that possibly happen? I didn't do that. What I think it is because somebody happened to show up, I think it surprised Gacy, and instead of kind of going through with this murder, probably came up with some bullshit lying excuse that, oh, the mob back in New York, they wanted me to take care of this kid because he owes him some money. So I think we've beaten them enough. I think he's learned his lesson. Let's go drop him off. Clinging on to the brink of life, Jeffrey crawls back to his house. His girlfriend takes him to the hospital. He's on the fucking cusp of death this entire time. It's a miserable, scary, and so fucking sad. But he makes it. He makes it through. And he immediately goes to the police. And what do the police do? They scoff. They say, Gacy, you gay? You're fucking stupid. So then Jeffrey decides to kind of take on his own little investigation, and he starts tailing this guy. And he starts seeing Gacy picking up all these kids, and he's like, dude, we gotta fucking stop this guy. We have to. So he keeps kind of feeding information to the cops, and guess what? The cops don't give a shit. And this is why, in the history of time and the grand scope of serial killers, there is this idea of the less dead.
How do so many people get away with murder for so long? 2 words: racism and homophobia. Now, the details might be a little bit more complicated than that, but I don't think the truth is too far stretched. You see, the media dictates just how many sobs are in a story, and the more sobs there are, the more that the base populace gives a shit. Oh, poor little John Benet Ramsey, this rich little white girl who got kidnapped from her rich white parents, but ended up found dead in their basement. Oh, boo-hoo! I'm so sad that white people get murdered all the time. But Gary Ridgway, a man who murdered prostitutes, primarily black prostitutes, got away for like 20 or 30 some odd years, and he believed that he was helping the law enforcement. Don't be a Gary Ridgway. Jeffrey Dahmer loved Puerto Ricans and African Americans. He loved them so much he just wanted to drill into their skull and fill it with orange juice so he could have them as his personal sex slaves, so he wouldn't have to hear them talk and he wouldn't have to be there emotionally. One of his victims even got away when stumbling out into the street, zonked out of his mind because his head is filled with battery acid, found a group of innocent bystanders. The police were notified, and Jeffrey Dahmer comes stumbling onto the scene, pushing little whispers of homosexual relations into the police's ears, and they let him fucking go. What? 33 victims would fall at the hand of John Wayne Gacy, 29 of which would end up buried in his crawl space. There's always this aspect of the souvenirs that the killers keep of their victims. Sometimes it's ID cards, sometimes it's clipping of hair, sometimes it's feet. And Gacy had a bunch of stuff. I mean, he had televisions and watches. It's just shit that he would just hold on to, but he would also kind of hand it out to his employees. And then there was Robert Piest. Robert Piest was a 15-year-old teenage boy. Your prototypical goody two-shoes, little happy-go-lucky good boy. That's what he was. And his family loved him, and he was very involved in his family, and he was working at the pharmacy because just in a couple of weeks he was about to turn 16, and he just wanted to save up some money so he could buy himself his own car. But Piest was a little upset. He wanted a raise. He believed that he had been working at the pharmacy long enough that he deserved a raise. So he goes to his manager and he's like, hey man, can you please just give me a raise? And the manager says no. And then just so happens, here comes little Gacy. And he pretends like he pays no mind to Rob. He's chit-chatting with the manager about some sort of shelving unit. There's some sort of remodel going on, something or whatever. But I just know that out of the side of his eye, Gacy saw this little kid. He saw this 15-year-old boy, and his penis it's just a little quiver, just did a little shimmy in his shorts, and then he couldn't stop fucking thinking about this kid. It was like being love struck, basically. Like he was like, I need to taste this boy's blood. But he's keeping it calm and he's keeping it focused, and he just so happens to tell the pharmacy manager, yeah, what do you pay your guys? Really? Because I've been paying them like $5 an hour, which is an obscenely high rate. Back in the 1970s. Oh man, you're paying your people $5 an hour? And he's like, yes. And I just so happen to be hiring teenage boys. Like, those are my favorite people to hire. So if anybody's looking for a job, just be sure to hit me up. I'm not telling anybody that specifically. I'm just saying outside. All right, see you later, Mr. Manager. And he leaves. But Gacy happens to forget his little pocketbook, which gives him an excuse to kind of cycle back. And so that night, Rob's shift is about to finish up, and he sees Gacy come back in, and he tells his on and off again girlfriend, I'm gonna go fucking talk to that guy. I'm gonna see if I can get a job with him, because dude, you heard him. He pays his guys really well.
So I'm gonna go see what the fuck is up. So Gacy leaves and Rob follows him out and he walks up to his car and he says, hey, mister? Hey, mister? Yeah, I was wondering about that job. And Gacy looks at him with a big old fucking smile on his face because the dude knows he won. This is the last night that Robert Peace was alive. And he spent it with this disgusting man who doesn't give a shit about anybody's life at all. There's no preservation of anything inside of him. He just consumes. The same way that he consumes food, he just consumes human lives. And it's fucking bullshit. Cousin Zach, Des Plaines Police, how may I help you?
Hello, officer? It's my boy Robert. He's gone missing. I was supposed to pick him up down at the pharmacy, but he told me he had to talk to some contractor about a better job. But he never came back inside. I went out and he was nowhere to be seen.
Are you sure he didn't run away, ma'am?
No, not my Robert.
Something about the way she said, "No, not my Robert," made me know that this one was different. That somehow this Peace boy had been kidnapped.
Officer?
Trust me when I say that the Des Plaines Puppy Police Boys are on the case. Where's this fucking guy? It looks like there's a treacherous tub of whale blubber sloughing its way around the house. Sir, can I help you? Is that a weapon? No, it's a screwdriver. I'm gonna have to repeat, sir, can I help you? No, yeah, we're looking for Gacy. Yeah, he's probably down in the den or something. You're gonna have to go around back or he can't hear you or whatever, because there's too much fat in his ears or something. What? But they can see him. They can see him in the window. How does that make sense? It doesn't, exactly.
Never in all my years in uniform did I ever think I'd see a complete ogre of a human. This man isn't a man. He's a bucket of cottage cheese, and I pray to God I ain't the spoon.
Can I help you? Yes, are you John Wayne Gacy? I am. Have you seen this boy Robert P? Nope. I haven't shown you the picture. No, you have pretty good names, sir. I think I remember if I ever heard that one before. Yeah, and I'm asking if you've seen him. With your fucking eyeballs. Well, I haven't. Are we done with this? I have a dead relative that I have to attend to. Well, can you stop by the station later? We'd like to ask you a couple questions. I don't care. Look, I'll do whatever you want. Just fuck off. We need to get surveillance on this tub of lard. We need a search warrant. We need everything we can get. I know this greasy pig is guilty. I fucking know it. Now all we gotta do is wait.
Approximately 10 hours later.
I can't wait for this ogre any longer.
Maybe if you stop making fun of his weight, he'd show up.
Just, if he comes by, tell him to come back in the morning.
Whatever you say, boss.
Alright, where's this cousin fuck?
He said to come back in the morning.
Look, I got a flat tire, I got stranded on the side of I-5, I tried to make it...
I don't care, just come back in the morning.
Yeah, okay, whatever.
Hey! Why you got Gacy in here? I know he's not the best to look at, but he makes a mean meatballs and spaghetti. Yummy, yummy, Italiano in my tummy. Let's hit Little Caesars, boys.
I just got a feeling in my testicles, Chef. We got a judge to sign off on a search warrant, and he even gave us the keys to his house.
Hey, Gacy's lawyer called, and if that feeling in your little nuts is wrong, we're looking at a lawsuit.
I know, but you just gotta trust me. If not for me, then for Peace and Peace Incorporated, a brand you can trust. Cousin Frozen, you'll never guess what we found in that tub of lard's house. Oh, I'm waiting with bated breath. A dildo coated in feces!
Whoa!
Why are you holding that with your bare hands? The search warrant didn't bring out much. We got a portable TV, a class ring, a watch, a stupid receipt from the pharmacy, a few porno books, and a gun. What do I do with this? I'm at a loss. I don't know what to do. There's no way that I'm gonna tie Gacy to this Peace boy. Hey, look! A psychic! I guess I'll stop by. It's not like I have anything better to do.
The answers you seek are coming to the surface. The people are definitely alive. His corpse is buried somewhere in some sort of yellow construction vehicles. You only like ketchup to your fries because it's what society tells you to do, even though you would much rather dip it in mayonnaise or ranch. Look at the receipt. The receipt that you found at the Gacy house. Look at the goddamn receipt.
The receipt, you idiot! It was in Robert Peace's jacket when he died, you fuckhead! Look at the goddamn receipt! All of these days of surveillance and you get your answers from a psychic? Is this in the budget? Maybe we should think about defunding the police if you're gonna get all your fucking answers from a goddamn con artist fortune teller.
Maybe I should take a look at the receipt. But wait, who is this floating in my periphery? It is that snot-nosed punk that we saw at that spoiled hot dog's house. I want to talk to him. Oh, Gacy? Yeah, I'm familiar with him. Sometimes in the middle of the night he likes to dress up as a clown and masturbate. I should know. I've walked in on him on 1 or 2 occasions. Maybe a handful. I don't know. Do you live with this Polish meatball? I used to, but not only is it a nightmare to live with your boss because he's going to get you up in the middle of the night to do who knows what, but you also had to sleep with your pants on, and that was kind of uncomfortable. Why? Well, most nights he'd come in belligerently drunk trying to force his little pecker in your behind. Are you aware of his connection with any disappearances? Gacy hires runaways. Half of their stick is running away. So sure, Gacy has come into contact with 30-something people that have mysteriously disappeared without a trace. And maybe some of those persons, some of their items have been distributed to other employees, including but not limited to a car, a television set, and a fake ID card. But do I think that they were dumped in the 6-foot trenches that spiral around his crawl space that I had to dig? No. Does Gacy's house sometimes smell like a rotting corpse? Maybe. Kafibble Fabble, we got a call on line 1. And? It's Gacy's lawyer. He's terrified out of his mind because Gacy confessed to murdering 33 people, and that we have to go and find him before Gacy makes himself the 34th victim. Oh, you son of a bitch!
Gacy would lead us on a goose chase across the entire town, stopping from location to location, from his favorite restaurant to a gas station in which he traded drugs for money, and would end up at his father's grave, where we assumed he would attempt to take his own life. We got him on the drug charge before he got a chance. And with that, the nightmare that Gacy created was put to rest. All thanks to the Des Plaines Puppy Police Boys.
Des Plaines Police Boys, transform and roll out!
Most of all, fuck you!
So with Gacy being caught, he would immediately confess to all of the murders. Immediately, without a doubt. He would just be like, yep, I fucking did it. This is what I did to every single one of them. And it deeply irked every single police that was investigating. But they fucking got him. They fucking got him. They knew what they had. It was just about making sure that it went to trial, that they crossed their T's and they dotted their I's. And Sam Amarante here is, even though he was desperately terrified of his client, he was going to follow the rules. Sam Amarante, he's got this whole book, Defending a Monster or something. And it's literally him, talking about how he believes in constitutional right. If we don't let this service, benefit the bad guys, then it's a flawed service or something like that. A very, very preachy, very self-indignant, very preachy fucking book. And it's so funny the way that he portrays his side of things compared to everybody else, making him seem like a big giant pussy who is terrified of Gacy, saying, dude, you gotta get this guy locked up so badly. An interesting read. If you really want to get an in-depth look at the trial process of John Wayne Gacy, this is the best way, because there's a lot of, especially with a lot of like the media, this is a big buildup of media. There was a lot of issue of, we can't do this case in Chicago because, everybody knows Gacy. We have to take this somewhere else because we don't want the jury to be biased. We have to have a completely open and blah, 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 blah. Having a system, having all these hoops and leaps and bounds so that people don't get wrongly accused of shit. And one of the important things, for whatever reason, they had to either wait to be able to do a trial on each individual murder, or to get it done faster or something like that. I'm sorry for not getting the details, but for whatever reason, so what the prosecutors had to do in this instance was they had to get an undeniable guilty on every single charge of all 33 charges of murder against Gacy. They had to get every single one, or none of them would count, which is a very interesting, like, it's weird for them to be like, well, he's guilty for this one, but not guilty for that one. And they say, well, I guess since you're only guilty of one murder, we're going to let you go. At some point in the evidence, in the process of gathering evidence, they cut out the entryway of Gacy's crawl space, and they took it to the trial to be in the evidence. They fucking ripped the floor of his house out and used it as a means to, as evidence that he killed these people. It's insane. And they had this they talk about during one of their closing arguments, the prosecutors were doing this big theatrical where he's got all the papers that got all the faces of all the victims, and he's naming them off, and he's throwing them through the crawl space, and it's this big, wonderful event. And obviously, Gacy was fucking guilty. But it doesn't help that Gacy immediately confesses his guilt. And then halfway through the process, he starts to backstep and he says, no, I didn't do it. So since he already confessed to police, his lawyer could only go with the insanity defense. And halfway through the trial, Gacy writes a letter basically saying something along the lines of, I never wanted to go with the insanity plea. I'm not insane. I just didn't fucking do it. He just starts making it difficult for everybody to do their job. When you're deeming that somebody is insane, it's about finding if they are legally insane, which is purely the question of, did Gacy know if he knew what he was doing was wrong? And the big piece of evidence that they always use to debunk anybody says, well, when he was next to these cops, did he murder somebody? So obviously he's able to show some sort of restraint, right? It's not like that one serial killer. I can't remember who it was, but it's like he killed somebody and then he just walked with a bucket of blood down the road with no regard, with no attempt to cover it up. Because that's the other thing. It was like, are they trying to hide what they've done? No? Okay. So Gacy writes this letter and it confuses everything, but obviously fucking without a doubt, they find him guilty. And then they move forward with whether or not they should put him on death row. And of course, everybody agrees that they should kill the son of a bitch.
In the trial, they had an issue deciding whether or not they were allowed to put Gacy to death because capital punishment was repealed in Illinois until about 1977, and then it was reinstated. And since Gacy's crimes occurred before and after, they didn't know if he was within this gray area where they couldn't put him to death because a majority of his crimes happened before, and the start of his crimes, the start of his spree happened before. But since he had deaths after, and he was aware of the fact that capital punishment was a possibility through whatever loophole or whatever or something, they were able to put him to death, basically, because, I don't know, whatever.
Gacy gets charged and he's on death row, and while he's in jail, he starts making these little paintings. Some of them are a little cute. I mean, they're fucking juvenile, but they're cute. But others are horrifying, almost unsettling. Just because of the nature, like when a guy who's murdered somebody paints a skull, it kind of transcends. When Leonardo DiCaprio decides to paint a skull, I guess that guy was raiding fucking things. Who knows what the point is? But he would even sell some of these paintings, be able to send some of them out. And Gacy had plans to write a book entitled The 34th Victim, and it was going to detail how he, John Wayne Gacy, is the 34th victim of all of his murders. That, it was going to be his side of the story about how he was tortured and about how he didn't mean to do it and how badly he felt for ripping these people from their families, from, murdering all of these fucking children. But fucking Big Boss Haas, whatever, they put down a law at some point, whatever it's called. I can't be fucked to look it up, but they put down a law that basically said, if you're in jail, you're not allowed to make money. So Gacy didn't end up writing that book, and he's like, well, I would, but I can't make any money off of it. Because I think he was going to do something where all of the money that he made off of it, he was going to donate to some charity or some bullshit. And he's like, oops, sorry, Governor so-and-so says I can't write a book. Guess you'll never know my side of the story. Like we need to know your side of the story, you fucking asshole. But in May of 1994, with so many appeals trying to stop the execution or whatever, he would meet his maker. They'd execute him via lethal injection. And it is quoted that his final words were "kiss my ass." That's Gacy beginning to end. I gave you the beginning of his life and I gave you the end of his life. And I hope you enjoyed the journey. A few years ago, I think it was like a few years, maybe it was like 10 years ago or so, one of the pieces of evidence that they took out of Gacy's house was this map that had all of these little pinpoints on it. And one of the prosecutors or something was like, we need to find out if he has victims elsewhere. We need to dig up other places that he's lived to find out if there's more victims. Because the police have this long list of unsolved cases, and if they can, you know, blot off more unsolved cases, obviously it looks better on the city and whatever. So I think they were finally able to get the city to excavate and dig up one of the locations or something, and they didn't find anything. And the guy's like big, like, you know, last speech was like, well, there's no reason why we shouldn't. Let's just fucking do it. So there might be more Gacy victims. I would love nothing more than to see Kevin James in the next John Wayne Gacy biopic. Even though he's a little too old, I would love to see that fat piece of shit murder children. Please give it to me. Give me Kevin James as John Wayne Gacy. Please. All right, ladies and gentlemen, that's the end of the episode. This is the first serial kill episode. I'm very excited. I'm very, very excited. I'm sorry that it took so long to kind of get to this point, but the pandemic has ruined everything. But I tried to make this one extra big, extra special, extra big, bad, and banging. So if you want more of this spooky content or whatever, think about subscribing, liking the shit. We just recently crossed 1,000 subscribers and I'm ecstatic. I finally feel like a real YouTuber. Isn't that crazy? I can tell people that I got a subscriber count with 4 fucking digits, guys. 4. Let's get that shit to 5 sooner than not. Fucking peace the hell out. I'm fucking out of here. And don't forget to stay the fuck out of apartment 213. Big fucking kisses, guys. Big fucking mwah! Big fucking kisses.
Another 8-bit classic. It seems like jbost over here is running out of ideas. Dear Doctor, my friends have been brainwashed by the oligarchy to believe that It Chapter 2 is a good movie. Please give me some hot tips and tricks to 360 no-scope their bad opinions into the pits of hell. Thank you. I don't care about this. Never in my life have I given less of a shit about something than I do right now. But allow me to take this time to push my political agenda. Oh, fuck. Here in the current biological warfare under the crushing grip of Bill Gates' social experiment, I urge you to wear a stupid fucking mask. Not because I care about whether or not you get sick. I'm just tired of seeing your stupid, ugly faces. I am a huge proponent of mass culture. I fucking love it. Every time I have to see one of you stupid flesh bags of blood, my penis shrivels inside of my body. So when I get home to spend the night with my gorgeous wife Letitia, I can't lay the pipe. And we got a fucking divorce. So just wear a fucking mask.